What is going on, everybody? What is going on? What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. Happy Monday. Obviously, don't know what to call these Mondays. But yeah, no, it's obviously, we suffered a loss yesterday. Something which I'm gonna go ahead and start off with this. I can honestly say with the Falcons, um, that we have, went this long without losing during the middle of a season. Maybe we've had some years we finished off, 3, 4 straight wins, close out with some pride. This is the first time I think, in a while we honestly look at it and we say, first time in a few weeks we've suffered a loss. It's kind of a new feeling to adjust to because we've been doing so much winning recently, which I think in itself shows the growth that, this team has made. But yesterday, the Falcons, there's no need to sugarcoat it, got their asses handed to them just for Seattle to kick it back 7 ways to fucking Saturday, 34-14 in a game that, pretty much, the Falcons killed themselves in, to be honest. And we just basically let Seattle do the honors. We pretty much, there were plenty of points in this game that the Falcons could have. And it's not to say, look, Seattle was coming off of a 3-game losing streak, and they were going to win what anyone says. They're a good team. Mike McDonald is a good coach. Smith offense. They got a solid defense too when they're all healthy. Falcons were riding a 3-game winning streak. That game, to be honest, you didn't get the vibe that you didn't get the vibe, that they were locked in like they should have been for this game. And I said this, throughout the week. I said I wouldn't be shocked if this was a trap game. Obviously, I don't like that we lost this game. We absolutely got our asses. Turnovers killed us, penalties, and I will say there were definitely a lot of questionable calls. That you can say maybe they shouldn't have been called. That went in favor of Seattle, but at the same time, that's the reality of the NFL. Sometimes that happens, and you can only blame the refs so much when you come out looking sluggish like that. So, yeah, it's really kind of a weird sequence of events. Obviously, with it being the first time in a few weeks that we've lost, but we're here to talk about it. We're here to talk about it. We've enjoyed the wins, but sometimes this stuff is inevitable too. And you're gonna lose at some point. No one goes undefeated in the NFL. And especially in today's league, man, it's so rare to see teams just go on these monstrous winning streaks. Which is why, you look at it at some point. Seattle, good team, coming in. They had some extra rest. They were fired up. They were ready to go. The Falcons were, kind of living off of a high of 3 straight divisional wins that, obviously you were at home, but you still had to turn around. You had to turn over. And it just kind of, it felt like the energy was off a little bit. It did, and you still kind of felt like that the Falcons at the end, it still felt like they could definitely make a game out of this. Even when you were down 24-4, we were either going to get a field goal or even honestly score a touchdown. We didn't. Hell, there was even a point 31-14 where I was thinking did not happen. Seattle didn't let there be any doubt. Really, after that strip, talk about the key point of Brandon on Friday. Who, congrats to him. Awesome meeting up with him at halftime. Did a little video. We talked some shit. We chopped it up. But yeah, no, shout out to him, shout out to Augator, shout out to everyone, everyone I was with yesterday, man. It was definitely a pleasure. It was, look, bottom line is this though, obviously wasn't the best result, didn't get the win. That's pretty much all that matters, but still, hung out with a lot of good people yesterday. Shout out to all y'all. Y'all know who y'all are. And I think really ultimately looking at this, we, look like, our typical selves. It didn't look like the Falcons you had seen in previous weeks. Kirk, it's something definitely looked off about him. From the moment I think you saw him miss Ray McLeod, and you maybe say, well, he needs to run harder or he needs to make an effort. Kirk needs to place that. Listen, Kirk's the type of quarterback you expect him to place a ball like that right into Ray's hands. And if that's the case, 10-yard line, hell, if he could have cut back in, it could have been a walk-in touchdown. So, yeah, that's, there are a lot of missed opportunities. And then I think the moment you look at literally with 10 seconds before halftime, Seattle all the way backed up, on a 2nd and 20 or something like that, 2nd and 15 anyway. It was somewhere around there in the third quarter. You do get that touchdown to cut it to 17-14. That in many ways, that could have been a difference because then you could have been up, when Seattle goes and scored. But that's just a lot of the things you work through, you look at, you want to analyze. But ultimately, listen, these are, these games happen sometimes. They do. They happen to the best teams. Every team is going to have a game where they come out and they look sluggish, and especially for a team like us, we still are in the process of trying. It was our first time being at this high in a while. So now, obviously we had to come back down to earth. Every team kind of needs this, from time to time. Obviously, you never want to lose. But I think when you're looking at it, it's not like we lost this way to a divisional opponent. Or now, granted, this could absolutely be a key game late in the season in terms of seeding. I mean, it could absolutely mean that. There's no one, listen, this is obviously a bad game. It's gave me too much. 34-14, but the Falcons had so many opportunities, even in this, and you don't know what happens after that. So listen, there were a lot of, I think, missed opportunities from the Falcons yesterday that led to us losing, but the better team on that field yesterday, they clearly won the game. And the Falcons were absolutely trapped. I warned it could have been a trap game. It was absolutely a trap game. So as far as where I think you really go after this and first of all, the takeaways, from this. The defense obviously stalled at many points yesterday. You could not stop the run. And DK Metcalf absolutely tore AJ Terrell a new one straight up the ass. AJ clearly could not hang with him yesterday. And that, as much as I think, AJ, you do have to give props to where, he is our number one corner bait. We're paying him a lot of money. And some of the plays that he just absolutely missed on yesterday were just god awful. And you got to show DK Metcalf respect. He's a very physical wide receiver. He's absolutely going to make his presence known. But the thing is, this isn't the only time we've seen this with AJ. He's struggled in these types of matchups. That's another thing I talked about. If we were going to win, AJ Terrell was going to have to take care of some business. There were a few passes he got like on that first drive, but after that, DK really started, tearing into him. He wasn't able to hang with DK all game. As far as Seattle, the rest of Seattle's offense goes, the Seattle did break a lot of runs to the outside, especially early in the game. Still, Seattle was able to run all over us. Their offense came out, didn't have any turnovers, and they were able to take care of business. And I still think, I'm going to get to in a second, it still leaves the big lingering question. Now, as far as the offense goes, the O-line was really banged up, and you can't use injuries as an excuse. Obviously Ryan Newsel was starting at center again yesterday. Drew Dahlman still on IR. I would honestly I do think Dahlman is going to be eligible to return after for this upcoming week versus Tampa. Will he? We'll have to wait and see. But Matthew Bergeron, he also went out. He got banged up yesterday. So those are two backups you're starting. And simply put, there's a reason they're backups. Seattle, absolutely dominated us. They got to Kirk several times. It was, I think, without a shadow of a doubt, with the exception of the week 1 game, probably the worst showing the O-line has had all year long in the terms of protecting the quarterback. And that can really honestly get you too. That can really sting. Now I'm also going to say, this, the offense, they did make it a key point to get him the ball, but even at that, really at what cost? Now there were a lot of, times Kyle Pitts, he had, I think, one reception that went. I mean, they were hitting him over the middle yesterday. That's the one thing we haven't seen a whole lot with. They were getting him involved. He didn't have really an egregious drop. And say, I will kind of feel like that's kind of where you also had some of your inabilities at. Because can really get Tyler Algier and Bijan going. That is really where you get into the point where your offense can just go hammers. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. Algier had 5 carries for 36 yards. That you have to give him more carries, because we've seen time and time again, especially as the game goes on, Tyler Algier, he can really wear down. Kyle Pitts had 7 catches for 65 yards. Drake London 6 for 63 and a touchdown. Drake, the connection, that is the one to a superstar before our eyes. You can arguably say he is a top. You can go up and down the list, but the Falcons once again yesterday only had 1 sack, and I think that leads to about the pass rush. And it's not even, because every team is going to give you an opportunity to get to the quarterback. And there were plenty of times yesterday you had Geno Smith to Rice, but you just couldn't let him. You just couldn't get him off the ground. Either you whiffed on it. It's still somewhat of a productive play, but still, you want to get him on the ground. And I think that's the big issue. The guy who is supposed to be this productive, maybe not dominant 20-sack guy, but, could have given you 8-9 sacks and could have set the tone for some other guys in Matthew Judon, has not done his job. He hasn't shown up, and the only damn way you can really recognize him, you can't tell he's even out on the field. And it's the same sack yesterday came from James Smith-Williams. That's just sorry. It's what I've said time and time again. The Falcons, why aren't you playing Brandon Dorlus? Because it's not the expectation Brandon Dorlus is going to come in and just take over and automatically be this, edge rusher that can get to the quarterback and get him on the ground, but at least see what he can do. At least see. But it certainly looks like the Falcons, if they're going to address it this year, are going to have to make a trade for an edge rusher. And to be honest, they're probably going to have to give up. I'm looking at Zadarius Smith. I'm looking at Azeez Ojulari, some of these cheaper guys that could be potentially available. Maybe they'll only cost like a 5th or a 6th round pick. But they're probably going to give you the same as Matthew Judon. They're just going to be other bodies. And I hate saying this, and I would hope I'm wrong. But if you brought Azeez Ojulari in here, I think he'd honestly just fit right in. That's another, even though he is having, he is on pace for a career year in sacks, would that actually continue here? Or would he just dip right back down to, because you also got to keep in mind, with the Giants, they got Brian Burns. They got Dexter Lawrence. They got the other boy too on that D line. Oh God, who is it that they got? They got Lawrence. Who's a Thibodeau? They got all three of them. So of course the Azeez Ojulari is going to get one-on-ones. Basically, he's getting shots at the quarterback as it is, because those are really all three of those guys. Oh, but here, a guy like Azeez Ojulari, when he's getting that attention, what is he honestly going to be able to do? Now, if he were to come here and be productive, it's a different conversation. But still, his development, I really think you have to consider. And it could honestly be, if you trade for Zadarius Smith, as much as, listen, if you would have told me 5 years ago I'm getting Zadarius Smith, I would have been ecstatic with it. Copycat of Matthew Judon. They're two peas in a pod. They're in the exact same boat. They're aging. It honestly feels like their best years are past them. We kind of maybe have to recognize the Atlanta Falcons might be where pass rushing careers who you've seen production at. They go to the Falcons. It's done. It's great to have to pull the trigger and get a major, game changer like Max Crosby or like Myles Garrett, or even someone maybe like Trey Hendrickson, who, at least has shown in Cincinnati his ability. Trey Hendrickson is how much fit would Trey Hendrickson wanting to run a 3-4 versus a 4-3. I don't know how much Trey Hendrickson fit. The way I'm looking at it, it could be a Max Crosby, or it could be, a Myles Garrett. And I'd be ecstatic if we get either one of them, because I think when you're talking about game changers, those are the types of guys that are game changers. However, at what cost? At really what cost is it going to be? And are the Falcons ready to make those trades yet? Because we all know this. Even though you might have a really good team, you always need to continue to add to it. And what's the way you add to your team? Your bones on draft picks as it is this year. So for Max Crosby, you're having to trade the barn for him. Now look, if that's what, but you have to keep in mind, are the Falcons ready for these types, to make these types of trades? That's what you got to think about. But also at the same time, you have a win. And in an NFC where I'm not saying anything, I'm not. But these there's many things to consider with making these trades. You got to consider all of the aspects to it. But I'm gonna say this, to ultimately, think. I will put it this way overall: the same. There were honestly no new questions arisen, and this kind of lead me into my next point. Down to earth, is it kind of, it feels like, suffering a loss again. We still do have pass rush, and still continue to open it up. But I'm not really too concerned yet. I'm not, because these types of games do happen. Now, the Falcons still have to address the ability to get to the quarterback and really have that dominating force on the front of the defense as it is. However, still, and I say this time and time again, if this were in years past and we were in this exact same position that we've been in so far this season, that we're in now, and we had, Arthur Smith and whoever as quarterback, yeah, I'd probably, this could be something that really derails our season, that the Falcons really are not playing the same. But with this being Raheem, with this being Kirk, I'm going to put faith in them. I'm going to tell y'all right now, I'm putting faith in them, because I truly believe that they can get this thing. And I truly honestly believe this could be an outlier game. I think in years past, yeah, this could be an absolute game that absolutely derails the season. However, I think now the coach we have, the quarterback we have, that veteran presence, we got to consider you have to put trust in them, I think. And we got a very big game on Sunday. There's no rest at all. There isn't. And Tampa plays tonight, and we're going to be watching them. Tampa's going to get a day less of. You want to talk about, having that rest, that extra day of rest, could be absolutely key. Tampa's going to get beat up tonight by Baltimore. That's the type of team Baltimore is. They're going to run it down their throat. So we have to consider, that is a factor to keep in mind. But I truly, honestly believe that, looking at it, the Falcons stand, a chance to really make this game a outlier game. His trap sure did get taken over. So yeah, no, I'm gonna put faith and trust into the coach and into the quarterback, because I can already tell by the way they're talking today, they were disappointed, but they're not going to let this define them. They can't. I even saw Justin Simmons, and I love having a guy like Justin Simmons on this team for many reasons. And hopefully we do bring him back, because he said, and we can't wait to get out on the field next week in Tampa. We can't wait, because we want to write this thing. We want to write this thing, and that's what it is. Yeah, no, it was definitely, we got to do it again next year. I know y'all play up down here again next year. Got to do it again. Well, yeah, if we were y'all, I'd probably be looking for a noose somewhere. But anyways, yeah, no, you keep going through it, man. You keep going through it, because man, I'm seeing some of y'all's fans. They're fucking doing flash sales. They don't want anything to do with your team anymore. But listen, it's obviously, this is not the worst loss in the world. This is, a loss maybe a team like us needs. But you got to bounce back now. You got to bounce back. And I'm not going to, I still believe that this is, a different team. I still believe that, off of what I'm seeing, you don't get the vibe that there's panic, even though you get the vibe that yesterday was a, absolute underperformance. It is not panic, and you can't let this game define you. You got a big game next week in Tampa, and it's time to lock in. Now, I honestly don't think Tampa will catch us sleeping. I don't, because I really feel now there's an urgency to go and lock in and get ready for that Bucs game. And this game Sunday, this could be the game that decides the division. I know it's week 8, and everyone's saying, oh, it's still so early. Look, by the end of week 10, when we go down to New Orleans, after that game, we'll already have played 5 of our 6 division games. The only game we'll have left is the last week of the year versus Carolina at home. So where we stand in this division, we're going to know by the end of week 10. And honestly, the chance we have to win this division. But whatever you can take care of, you have to take care of. And I feel like there is a sense of urgency for these division games, and there has to be. There absolutely has to be a sense of urgency for division games. The other thing yesterday, too, is our first conference loss. Even though it could be a big game when seeding comes down to it, the fact we went till week 7 without a conference loss, I think that kind of speaks volumes also. It does. Our only 2 losses prior to yesterday were the AFC teams. And we know those just, outside of just, the general record, those don't really count for much of anything. So, yeah, it's obviously it's a disappointing loss, but it's not the worst loss in the world. I do want to give out a game ball. There is one game ball I have to give out. I'm going to give it to Bijan Robinson. I will say this about Bijan. Yesterday, I think what we were expecting him to be coming out of Texas and coming here, the runs that we were expecting him to break off, the shiftiness, the moves we were seeing, we haven't really seen that too much. It kind of feels like there's been, a little bit of impatience. It feels like there's almost been like you're just trying to hit the hole and see whatever happens. You're not being patient. You're not, calculating your, juke or, what you're going to do properly at the right time. Yesterday, Bijan had the big catch on the sidelines in the passing game. $143 scrimmage yards. Saw him, despite the loss, you really saw him stand out in a lot of the plays that he made yesterday. And obviously, you hope to see him continue to grow on it. He's going to have to, because we got a big game in Tampa on Sunday. You want to see, listen, that's going to have to be a game where you do lean on the running game, of course, first Tampa, to set up your passing game. But look, I'll say this about this game to close it out. Obviously, stings to lose, but it's not the worst loss in the world. These games happen. You're going to have 1 or 2 every season, typically, that you should have won, but you didn't. Sometimes this happens. The Seattle game, we ain't beat Seattle in the regular season here. But you can't let these losses define you. You can't. You just got to come out next week, locked in versus Tampa. That's the way you got to look at it. So, no, I'm not sounding the alarm yet. It is just one game. And I'll talk about the Bucs game later in the week. But I absolutely feel like we can go down to Tampa and beat them on Sunday. I do. I don't, even though Tampa is a good team, I absolutely feel like now the sense of urgency, will definitely be up there. Well, with that being said, I'm going to get out of here. Shout out to everyone, for coming in. It was good time at the game yesterday, with some good people. That's what made it a good time, of course. And one, the performance on the field, because Lord knows the Falcons did not show up. But with that being said, I will see you all in the next one.